So I'm going to talk about why you would spend any time at all doing sort of score reading exercises or having to read alto clef stuff. And the first thing is it's going to make you encounter the materials in a different way, where it's like the same 5 lines and the placements of the notes become completely new. So like it puts you back to the beginning of the process. So it's a beginner's mind thing, but it's also like seeing how learners encounter something. And then it also, instead of using your memorized knowledges that just happen automatically, what it does is you relate to the 5 lines differently, and your behaviors at the page have to become different for you to parse the alto clef stuff. And so what that does is it reveals new ways of thinking. So like, for example, when you're looking, you can think of it as intervals, so like you see one tone and you know you're on this note, and then you just know that the next spot, that's intervals. It also makes you look across the line. You're going to look across the line and you're going to notice where same notes are. So in a way it reveals contour more deeply, because when you see a note and you see that it's like a changing tone and then over here it's the same note, you're going to notice that stuff more because it's going to help you play the line. So the way you consolidate the information is different when you do it with alto clef exercises. So, that's a really theoretical point, but it stops being theoretical the moment you do it, because when you have to do it, you find yourself faced with the problem of, how do I think in order to execute this difficult task? And then the way you think is gonna, after some repetition, it's just gonna change, because you're gonna have a more like fluent, consolidated method that relies on capacities that you developed over time. But anyways, at least encounter this once, where you're just like, how do I do this? This seems impossible. But then you do find a way, and you find that there are ways of knowing that aren't memorizing where the notes are. Eventually you do want to just have memorization and total recall, but it'll just show you, like sort of like how people who play by ear, they have different kinds of knowing than someone who only reads notes. This will teach you different kinds of knowing, different ways of apprehending what's happening on the page, and different ways of tooling your skill set in your brain when you look at stuff on the page. So I don't know, I haven't made a totally cogent point yet, but it reveals how your cognition works while you're looking at the notes. The other exercise to do is try to transpose something. And immediately you're faced with like, okay, I got to put this down a whole step. Do I look at the page and then transpose it, each note down, just think it down a step? Or do I just play and assume that when I'm not seeing accidentals, I just play diatonic stuff and it's going to work? That works. Or do you use intervals the whole time? I think most people do that. I think that's what I've heard recommended by a professor once, was like, it's an intervals thing. And here's the other thing, is like you have like a hyper theory that appears. So like while you're reading, you're so used to music using 1, 4, and 5 chords and your hands have played in such and such key so often that sometimes, even though you don't know exactly what notes to play because you can't transpose it quickly enough, your hands still do the right thing just by seeing the shapes on the page, because the 1, 4, 5 shapes, you've seen them so many times on the page that your brain just has a gestalt and it's mapped to the motor function. And that's just incredible when you're doing without conscious knowledge of it. That's like, wow. Of course, that's maybe not reliable, but it just goes to show how many different kinds of knowledge there are and different ways of parsing what's in front of you information-wise. And some of the knowledge is just memorizing. Some of it is inferring across space. Some of it is inferring between spaces. And some of it is looking at total shapes, and like you're able to just kind of execute those because you've habituated to shape making with your hands. Some of it is a disclosure of like an infinite subconscious storehouse of knowledge. You know what I mean? Like,
walkers, you're free to leave at this time. Walkers, you're free to leave at this time.
There's an announcement. Some of it is just complete background, like unconscious knowledge, but it's still there and it still helps you function. So once you get better at piano, certainly as you get better than I am at piano, you'll start to see like there are hidden knowledges in your hands. So like Your hand can go down to the F chord because it senses the pointer finger bumping into such and such note. Okay, I don't have any examples right now, but it's like your hands are so good at just finding shapes and knowing where they are on the keyboard for reasons that they're fully sublimated reasons. You never consciously learn them unless someone taught them to you. And there are lots of knowledges like that where you don't know why you know how to do what you're doing, but it can be revealed if you parse it after the fact. And then the really wild thing is then you can start to consciously employ it, and there will still be other subconscious items working in the background. But okay, yeah, that's all really theoretical. So I can talk about it a whole bunch. It's like, it's more important to just go do it. Like, just go be a piano player. And that's the best way to learn. So the felt force of the unfolding and the knowing, that's what really counts. But I do believe in like encounter experiences for revealing aspects of your cognition. So, okay, that's the video.